Can we pull up, there's a chart that was given to us by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It's a map of the United States. And you can see that the green states, I'm having a hard time reading that little, but I've got it here. It says the green states, this is from the, this is winners and losers from the EPA carbon regulations. And it says states that will be able to increase CO2 are in green, or they'll be able to sell credits to others needing to achieve compliance. States that are in red must reduce CO2 emissions or purchase credits from states in order to comply. So this, to me, this rule has been published. No, it actually hasn't been published. It's been finalized, but it's not been published in the Federal Register as of this point. But when it goes into effect, it's going to establish winners and losers. I guess my question for the witnesses, and I'd like to start with you, Chairman Shaw, is do you perceive this as a transfer of wealth from maybe your state of Texas to the green states?
Thank you, Chairman. Certainly, when you look at the fact that Texas rate will have to be reduced by about 33%, that is going to come at a cost, and certainly one of the major costs that we've seen, and part of the reason that we've been able to have economic prosperity and growth in our state has been due to low cost of energy. The likely pretty extreme increase in rates is going to make it much more difficult for our state to continue to provide those jobs and resources that are necessary for that growth. So yes, it would certainly make it easier or make it an uneven playing field from that perspective if you're not having to make those investments. And we've made investments, $7 billion in building out a transmission line for our 13,000 megawatts of wind energy are significant investments that we've already made.
Director Butler, how do you see this for your state?
Thank you for the question. I look at it two ways. There's two ways for a state to comply, particularly Ohio. We're either going to need to shut down additional coal assets and buy more expensive power, or buy credits from somebody else. Both of those will have a significant cost for the state of Ohio to reach what I indicated in my testimony, which is a 37% reduction in CO2 emissions, and that's an 11% increase over the draft plan.
Mr. Eisdorfer, it looks like your state's going to be able to sell power or sell credits. You guys stand to gain a lot from a rule that, by the way, did not exist until this month.
Mr. Chair.
Or I guess last month.
Mr. Chair, two quick points. One, under the proposed rule, Oregon actually did not come out very well in this sense, and yet the state really welcomed the Clean Power Plan as a good first step toward addressing climate change. So the final rule did turn the tables a little bit. But the second point I would make is that there are a number of customers of utilities in Oregon that are tied to assets in Montana, Wyoming, and Utah. So in that sense, Oregon is tied throughout the West, and while this map makes it look like Oregon is sitting pretty, we have a lot of work to do and a lot of cooperative discussions on a multi-state basis in the West.
Do you disagree that Oregon will be advantaged compared to Texas or Ohio?
Again, there are two things that Oregon has to think about. One is complying as a state, and in that sense, Oregon is in very good shape. The second thing is rate impacts on customers in Oregon, and we have to work with the states in which thermal resources are outside of Oregon but serving Oregon. So it's a little bit of half a loaf, perhaps.
Dr. Shaw, the EPA has assumed in the final Clean Power Plan that renewable energy sources will increase dramatically as a result of this rule. My home state of Oklahoma is already a nationwide leader in wind energy. We're fourth in the country in electricity produced from wind, accounting for over 15% of electricity generation in Oklahoma. Do you believe the EPA's targets for renewable energy renewable energy increases are realistic given the existing increases in production in states such as yours and mine, Oklahoma and Texas?
Chairman, my state as well as yours have made pretty phenomenal increases in renewables, especially wind energy, and the rate that EPA has projected in determining our goals appears that for years 2023 through 30, we would have to increase our renewables and wind being part of that at the maximum rate that we've ever done it every year in that time frame. And I think that's far from typical and would be very challenging to meet.
Last question, I'm running out of time. Under the final Clean Power Plan, will states like Oklahoma and Texas get any credit for renewable energy sources that have already been implemented in their states? The investments we've already made, will we get credit for that?
Unfortunately, because many of those investments happened after before the 2012, which uses a baseline, we don't get credit for those investments, and so it is a pretty significant blow from that perspective.